When I first started seeing people speaking in the targeted individual community, I was more or less ignoring it because it seemed
Mhm.
kooky to me,
Yeah.
which there was a fistful of topics in
Mhm.
my, I guess, my hobby of studying different topics. There was a fistful of topics that I just kind of avoided because they seemed kind of kooky. That was
Yeah.
on the list. The another thing on that list was like the secret space program. But in my studies, there was like certain lines of study that I would get to where it would bring me in a direction of one of the kookier topics, and that's where I would stop because I was like, I must be going in the wrong direction. Was the way my brain
Mm.
was working.
Mm.
But then I started to pay attention to more of my own experiences, and I had to start making connections that I did not want to make, and now I have myself associated to the term targeted individual, which I never
Mhm.
thought that was going to happen.
Mm.
But you're right. It is an uncomfortable environment in a way, but I
Yeah.
I do work within the community because as you and I are learning, there is technology that exists that is
Right.
that's showing at the very least some of
Yeah.
the things these people. This is how devastating technologies like V2K can potentially be. I mean,
I
this is
know.
right on the list of a previously sane person, a
Yeah.
completely normal person who is unaware that this technology exists. I mean, I sound like a crazy person discussing it, but if people
Yeah.
really, I mean, we used to have the term brooding was an activity. People would sit and brood, which means
Yes.
to just deeply think. I
Mhm.
ask people to brood on the idea that I'm discussing with V2K. Consider it real. Brood on the idea. What do
Mhm.
we do knowing that there is a technology that tolerates for somebody to speak words into your head in your own voice? That is a dastardly tool. In antiquity, there were techniques to do these things. You could call someone a magician, a whatever you
Mhm.
want to call it. But there was a technique, called throwing your voice. There's a
Oh
way.
yeah.
There
Yeah.
was a way. If you had the skills and technique, you could speak in someone else's voice to them and they would think it was coming from themselves.
Mhm.
Now we have a technology that can copy that.
Yes.
And what we've been witnessing for the last few decades is what I would say it's just tuning it in. It's just practice.
Mhm.
Just like when a
Yeah.
gun manufacturer makes a rifle, they have to go to the range and they have to try to shoot on target. They have to get precision. So a new rifle was built, so to say. And for the last few decades, the targeted individuals, the folks that were getting gang stalked, folks like your person who's, you know, has the impression of wings coming out of his back. These are all things that could be manufactured.
Yes.
And I believe that our ancients were aware of the dangers of this. And these are where we had mystery schools challenging folks to know thyself and how important that was to know thyself, to find the imposter voice in your own mind. I think is
Yeah.
what people are going to learn in the not too distant future is one of the most challenging and important things they will ever attempt to do in their life. It makes me wonder, just in the grand scheme of hearing people's histories and, my experiences with the world and government organizations and facilities. Let's just say like this, if you could package up the technology into some crates, right? So, to imagine there's this crazy technology and there's a department that's using it, but all of a sudden they lose their funding. It doesn't mean the technology disappears. It means it goes back into the crates and now it gets put in a warehouse somewhere. And we all think, well, it's good that they defunded that. Well, yeah, until the warehouse hands figure out what's in the boxes. And then
Or
next thing,
pirates.
and then next thing you know, it's black marketed out, or they're, that it's this
Mhm.
stuff. It once it's born on this planet, it's not going
Yeah.
away. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
whose hands are manipulating it. So even what you're hearing, to like, it almost sounds to me like it's just, I'm hearing that the technology is moving from hand to hand or being sold out and expanded, and this is why we're just
Mm-hmm.
getting people that are having the same experiences like you mentioned on December 5th, and then
Mm-hmm.
also different experiences because they're changing the programs. You know, I wonder if we all as human beings had been paying attention on December 5th, if we were all taking notes on how we felt, what percentage of the population in total would have had the exact same symptoms, but because their life experience doesn't give them the wherewithal to pay attention to it at all, just wrote it off as something
Mm-hmm.
else,
Mm-hmm.
when it could have just been a
Yeah.
faction, could have been opening up a crate for the first time on December 5th
Yeah.
and went, what does
Yeah.
this do? And then they would, and all of a sudden a whole portion of the population goes, I don't feel good. There's a lot of potential for evil with these technologies, right? So right now there's a conversation that a lot of people aren't aware that a lot of the information on the internet is just, it's manufactured by another program. You know, it'll see a little news story
Mm-hmm.
over here, another thing over here, and it can automatically, using the devices of the machinations of industry of the internet, the computer can make a news story and
Yeah.
present it to the computer. And then we're now reading news stories that are manufactured by the digital realm. So how long before that technology grabs a transmitter
Yes.
and says, I'm going to now just pump out the news directly?
Yeah.
I'm not going to
And
wait for the humans to click on Google anymore.
yeah.
You know,
And
we already know you can manipulate the minds just by the power of the edit and the presentation of information. How far are we going to go with how this medium works and interfaces with our minds? And I think what you and I and some other folks are learning is that the technology is a lot further ahead on the curve than people are being told. There was
well,
there was a consideration during the Cuban Missile Crisis. One of the options that they fielded was to have a submarine surface off the coast of Cuba and utilizing, which was available at the time in the 60s, hologram technology along with V2K, and they were going to give a visual and audio representation of the return of Christ to get them to stop what they were
oh,
doing. They did
really?
not eventually put that to action, but it does go
Yeah.
to show us how long these technologies were
Yeah.
available. I'm
But
publicly letting everybody know that the technology exists and they need to know thyself a lot better, because I'm letting everybody know you're already all targeted individuals. That's what I learned in the process of finding the term to be kooky, but doing the due diligence and research. The technologies do exist, and guess what, world? You're all suffering from it right now.
are you suffering from um, being actually targeted from directed energy weapons that are going into your brain, body, and biofield, zapping you, burning you, stinging you, putting images into your mind, doing stupid chatter in your mind? Are you suffering from that?
Mm-hmm. Who isn't?
Exactly.
Who isn't? I think
I don't know.
if you talk to anybody now long enough, just like we were
Mm-hmm.
saying earlier, like I was suggesting that if we had all journaled, we would all find something weird happened on December 5th. So that's why I'm trying to get people to talk more, because I believe the devil is in the
Mm.
details of the conversations we're not sharing.
Yeah.
So I do believe, yes,
Huh.
I pay enough attention
Okay.
to know that the list of Havana syndrome items hits me square on the head.
Okay.
I think contemporarily it hits everyone square on the head, but most people aren't paying attention. They don't know
Mm.
thyself, and they certainly cannot take any of the problems in their life and follow them back to source. They're not in that activity to begin with. They're not paying that much
Mhm.
attention. It's the beauty of these machines and the plausible deniability is that right off the bat, if anyone is paying attention, we get to call them a kook. I mean, that's what's going on, is that, you are cannon fodder for a system that's trying to figure out how to be more accurate.
Mm.
Back when I was a kid on Long Island and there was all weird stuff going on, one of the things that was discussed about the technique of the training of agents and programs was they would simply pump out a signal with a phone number. Anyone who's receptive, which they don't know yet, they're just transmitting and trying to dial in. They would crank out a phone number, and it would be in whomever's heads. They don't know. It'll just keep, like you said, a song going over, a song. Well, someone decided, let's pump out a phone number, and we'll keep doing that till people start calling. And that's how they started to dial in. You know, so if you're a teenager on Long Island, and you're like, man, I don't know why, but 516-422-33333 needs to get called. And you call that thing up, and next thing you know, they're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, you called.
Never thought about it that way.
It's that simple. And that's how they started this system of engaging the minds through these technologies. It's extremely easy to catch people on a frequency. It would be really easy. It would be really easy if you were a complete vegan, right? You're a total vegan. And all of a sudden in your head, in your voice, you're hearing like, oh man, I could go for a bacon cheeseburger. That would be really easy to say, that's not me. And you could say, something's going on. This is weird. Why do I have that intrusive thought?
Yes.
Excuse me. And now, granted, the system could do that, but I think what people need to pay attention to is that, as we can see in the mass media and politics and the way of the world, is that everything's in baby steps. You know, they take over in baby steps. So I believe these technologies don't need to be as so bold as trying to get vegans to eat bacon cheeseburgers. But what people need to pay attention to is that if there's an AI involved, right? You know, it's not like there's a technician, a man sitting at the terminal going, I'm going to make Jeannie say such and such right now. It's not like that. It's about manipulation. So if there's an AI that just becomes familiar with someone like you, and through your integration with the network, you know, you jump on the internet for this, you have a cell phone that does that. It's literally tracking. All of these things are tracking everything you do and giving metadata to something. That something can process that information, make an assessment of who you are and what you're up to. And then it can then add you into the mix of the whole of society, and then decide if it likes what society's up to or not. And it can start changing things on an individual level, simply by giving you different commercials in your gear to begin with. You know, if the system wants to sell more milk by the end of the year, it's going to start creating more dairy commercials. And maybe you'll start thinking in your head that you want more dairy products. And maybe people would think that that type of stuff is just happening naturally. Or maybe it turns out that our brains have already been completely commercialized for the market. And it turns out when you were hungry and you had a hankering for something, what if it had nothing to do with your thought? Who's going to figure that out? You know? When one industry can say, you know what? You know, we used to invest in commercials to get to that goal at the end of the year, the milk, right? You know, the milk industry wants to say, by the end of this year, we want to have sold 5 billion gallons of milk. So previously, they would have to go to the media industry. We're going to have to produce commercials. And how do we get people to buy our milk? Cool. Well, that's a dead technology because we got better stuff now. There's new corporations that exist. Oh, you want to sell milk? Oh, we can make people buy your milk. It's not a unilateral thing. There's so many factions that operate under that umbrella that have no idea what each other are doing.
Right.
I think that in that multitude of factions and everything else going on, there are a couple of groups that have a piece of equipment that is turned on that is meant to impact everyone. That's all. So that device exists, as well as other stuff that's more pointed.
Yes.
We have everything going on. It's literally everything going on. There's probably 6 different devices on, with different factions, and each one of them saying, this is being pumped out to everyone right now. Now, there's also people with another device that's saying, no, 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 this one is only doing this, and it's only doing it to that person. Or this one's doing it to these 12 people. There's so much of this going on. You know, myself, I took a role as a plumber at the South Pole Station. In that task, I came across some very important information, and I just believe that everyone else is walking the same path as me. They just need to pay a little bit more attention around them, gather up the information that you didn't think was important before, figure out your life experience, and share it with everyone. That's all I want everybody to do. I learned that my path was more important than I thought. I just think other people can do the same thing. Everybody works somewhere. All of this nefarious stuff is happening under false pretenses somewhere. Someone's working for these outfits. Someone has more documents in front of them. And it's through communicating the truth, getting beyond the veil of disinformation and misinformation that's been applied so liberally as of late, that the truth will set us free. I believe in that, you know, and that once everybody learns to actually know thyself, the confusion will disappear. It'll almost self-regulate. It'll be like I think of it just like a calming of the waters. It could just happen in a blink. You know, you can be looking at ripples in the water, and you don't necessarily know where they all came from, but you can just as easily watch them settle. And I have a feeling that for some reason we're just going to watch all the ripples settle out of nowhere once everybody becomes informed.